Reporting the plane carrying Commerce Secretary Ron Brown has reportedly crashed in the former Yugoslavia. The plane on its way to Dubrovnik. There are very few details at this point. For what we do know, let's go now to David Morton in Washington. David, can you tell us what you've heard?
Well, I have heard that the plane has gone down in the Adriatic. It was a U.S. Air Force plane. Exactly how many people were on board is in question now. According to one account, Brown and 26 other passengers and a crew of 8 were on board, but I have also gotten reports that a crew of 6 and only 10 passengers were on board, and I don't know which of those is correct right now. He was on a flight, as you said, from Tuzla to Dubrovnik in Croatia, and the plane has apparently gone down in the water. It was a plane called a T-43, which is the military version of a commercial 737. There is no indication yet as to why the plane went down, no indication of foul play having been shot down by one of the warring parties, and no indication of a malfunction aboard the plane. We just don't know now. There are a lot of ships in the Adriatic supporting the military operations in Bosnia, and those ships and the associated aircraft are conducting a search for the downed plane right now.
David, I guess we don't know at this point, as you say, who precisely was on that plane. Commerce Secretary Brown was in Croatia leading a high-level American business delegation that represented some 15 companies specializing in infrastructure, transport, energy, tourism, and financial services. You're looking at some pictures now of Brown visiting there with military leaders. David, have you heard anything at all at this point that some of those business leaders might have been on that plane as well?
Well, I think that's certainly the assumption that some of those passengers, particularly if it's the high number of 26 passengers, that some of those passengers would have been these business executives. But exactly which executives went where once they got in Bosnia, we don't know, and it's entirely possible that many of them stayed behind in Bosnia, and also equally possible, I think, that many of them went on with Secretary Brown to Croatia, because, of course, that was the point of his journey there, which was to get this whole civilian rebuilding effort going in the former Yugoslavia.
David, at this point, it may be a little bit early to speculate, but obviously this is an election year. The president was trying to be very careful about the U.S. role in Bosnia, in the former Yugoslavia. If the Secretary of Commerce has been killed, if he's been shot down, what do you think that's going to do to the president's policy right now in Bosnia and the former Yugoslavia?
Well, clearly, if it was shot down, things will have to be rethought, and there will be an enormous backlash. But I think it's probably too early even to be speculating on that, because there is, I say again, no indication that it was shot down. There's just simply no indication of what happened to that plane at all. But you should know that there is an enormous intelligence organization that tracks aircraft of all kinds in that area and picks up all electronic signals that emanate from any place in the former Yugoslavia. So if there was foul play here, there's probably evidence of it somewhere in all of the intelligence that's collected on a minute-by-minute basis over the former Yugoslavia.
Okay, to recap here at this moment in time, we're waiting for a presidential spokesman or a White House spokesman on this matter. A plane carrying U.S. Secretary of Commerce Ron Brown has reportedly crashed on a flight over the former Yugoslavia. Brown had been on a trade mission to Europe. He was flying from Tuzla, the U.S. military base in Bosnia, to the Croatian port of Dubrovnik. The plane was a military version of the Boeing 737. Reportedly, it was flying with 34 people aboard when it went down in the Adriatic Sea just short of the airport in Dubrovnik. There's no word on whether anyone survived, and there is no report as to the cause of this crash. Secretary Brown had been traveling with 12 American businessmen. It is not known whether they were aboard. All right, we have here word that a source says the plane went down outside, just outside Dubrovnik. It is unclear, again, as I say, whether the corporate executives were on board or whether they were left behind in this flight. We are waiting now for word from Washington official spokesman to give us some additional information. David, let me go back to you on this. Was there any information as to whether this plane was given some kind of Air Force escort? I mean, is it normal for a plane like that to be escorted by U.S.
This is Rita. Hello.
U.S. Air Force planes?
Well, if you mean flying along on the wing, I would think not. There are U.S. Air Force or NATO aircraft overhead in Bosnia 24 hours a day, but I doubt that one would escort specifically an aircraft. I remember flying into Tuzla back in December when the situation was a lot iffier, and although there were plenty of warplanes orbiting overhead, there was no airplane that was escorting you in the sense of flying on your wing into Bosnia.
I think we've got Rita Braver standing by at the White House. Rita, do you have any information at this point? Does the White House have any information as to what the cause of this crash may be? Are we to expect that kind of information from them in a few minutes?
Right now, they're saying they just have nothing confirmed. In the words of one national security source, nothing has gelled yet. The president's press secretary says he is ready to make an announcement pretty soon.
Rita, excuse me for interrupting you. We have now, we're going to go now to the White House.
We were first notified about this by Ambassador Peter Galbraith, our ambassador to Croatia, who phoned the State Department to report that the Secretary's plane had not arrived on schedule. You'll see right now a lot of conflicting reports from all sorts of sources about what they think has happened. The answer is, at the moment, we just don't know. The president is very concerned, obviously. As you can imagine, he has spoken to Mrs. Brown within the last half hour. He has decided to remain here at the White House and not proceed with his schedule so that he can get further reports from National Security Advisor Tony Lake. We've assembled a task force at the U.S. State Department, which we would do in circumstances like this to get information, to work with other governments that might have information, and to deal with any American citizens and their families who might have been part of that flight. And the Pentagon, because of our military presence in the theater, will be putting together further information and be in a position to brief later on in the day. That's really all I have at this point.
Information what kind of plane it was?
There are conflicting reports about the type of plane, although it is apparently a U.S. Air Force plane. And we can confirm all that. Okay. We know that the plane was a U.S. Air Force T-43, which is their military equivalent of a 737, right? And then we do have, because of our military presence in the area, we are assisting with search and rescue efforts that are underway. I believe some other governments have indicated that they're participating in search and rescue. They've got both helicopters and C-130s involved in that. There is a report now that we can confirm that there is wreckage in the water, but we cannot confirm at this point that that wreckage is in fact Secretary Brown's plane.
Is there any indication?
It's the only information we've got.
Any indication of foul play?
None that I have at this point.
Were there CEOs with him, Mike?
We are working to verify the manifest at this point.
How many people were on the plane, Mike?
We don't know. There are conflicting reports about that indicate perhaps as many as a half a dozen passengers, but again, we need to confirm that.
And the plane's destination?
Was Dubrovnik.
From?
Tuzla, from Tuzla to Dubrovnik.
And what exactly was he doing there, Mike?
Well, Secretary Brown, as you know, is on a very important mission to build support for both trade ties and economic assistance to former Yugoslavia as we implement the civilian aspects of the peace accords that have brought some measure of peace to Bosnia and to former Yugoslavia. He was working to, assist U.S. companies in the private sector in developing closer trade ties and economic ties with those countries as they emerged from the shadows of the Civil War.
Was this plane unescorted?
We don't know that. We don't know the man. We have not verified the manifest. Well, he had a large delegation of both private sector leaders and other U.S. government employees who were doing various aspects of the trip at various points, which is why we want to make sure we know for certain the manifest before we say anything further about it.
All-American? The team that was with him?
We need to just verify that, and we'll give you updates later in the day.
He had been, I gather, at a ministerial meeting in Lille before this, or when did he enter the theater of?
It was within the last several days, if my recollection is correct. He was at the G7 ministerial meeting in Lille up until the weekend, right? We'll get you more information about that as it's available.
When you say the water, it's the Adriatic?
That is the Adriatic off the coast of Dubrovnik, yes.
The sighting of the wreckage and the location of the wreckage give you some sense that it was along the flight path?
But we'll have to develop that information for you. We are at the very early stages of reporting on this, and as we get more reliable information, it will be coming to you, as I said, from the Pentagon. We are going to not plan to do any further briefing here at the White House because the best source of information we believe will be the Pentagon. I'll keep you apprised here later in the day about the President's activity.
I also understand there was quite bad weather in that.
We do have reports that the weather was very bad, yes.
Were there any prior reports of plane trouble?
Not that I'm aware of, but again, let's develop more facts for you and then we'll report back. Thank you.
Are you going to brief again?
Much later in the day.
Do we know?
Not 1 o'clock?
Not 1 o'clock?
No 1 o'clock?
You see there from the White House that at this point we have very little information about what's happened. Here again is what we know. A plane carrying Secretary of Commerce Ron Brown has gone down off the coast of Dubrovnik in the former Yugoslavia, in Croatia. As you heard the White House say there is wreckage in the water in the Adriatic, but they cannot confirm it is Brown's plane. They have not yet been able to obtain the manifest, so they cannot confirm who else was on the plane. The plane apparently was unescorted, but that again is also not confirmed. What caused the plane to go down, again, you heard the White House spokesman say there, we just don't know. This is Anthony Mason with CBS News in New York. Let me go back now to David Martin at the Pentagon in Washington. David, does the Pentagon, at this point, we just don't seem to have very much information at all, do we?
No, I can give you just a few pieces of additional information about what's going on now. The Navy has two ships, a destroyer and an Aegis cruiser in the area that are taking part in this search and rescue mission. One of the destroyers has a helo on board, and almost certainly that helo has been launched and is looking for survivors. There is also a P-3, which is a maritime reconnaissance plane that is in the area, and I feel fairly certain that one of those aircraft would be the source of the report that wreckage has been spotted in the water. But I think beyond that, it's all speculation. I mean, it sounds very much like the plane was on final approach to Dubrovnik. Mike McCurry, the White House press spokesman, said the weather was very bad, and it sounds like something happened on that final approach. When you're on final approach, you're going low and slow, and there's at least a chance, I suppose, that the plane could have pancaked into the water and that there could be survivors.
David, as we mentioned before, there were a number of business executives who were traveling with Commerce Secretary Brown on this trip, although we do not know, again, that they were on this plane. Among the 12 CEOs with Brown are Paul Cushman III, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Riggs International Banking Corporation, and Daniel Bannister, the CEO of the Reston-based company Dine Corporation. But again, I must emphasize here that we do not know if these gentlemen were on that plane. We do know they were in the delegation in the former Yugoslavia. Let's go back to Rita Braver now at the White House. Rita, there must be enormous concern there at this point in time.
Oh, there have been meetings. People have been closeted, just trying to figure out what's happening. And the White House Situation Room just doesn't have a lot of information, as David mentioned. What is known is that the United States ambassador to Croatia, Ambassador Galbraith, has been personally involved in sending some of the details back to the White House. And in fact, one source told me that he was the person who was really passing them most of the information early on, even before they started hearing about it from the U.S. military. I think also it's important important to talk a little bit about how close the president is to Ron Brown. He is one of the president's favorite cabinet officials. They go back a long way from their days in the Democratic Party together, and even though Brown has been under investigation by an independent counsel, the president has always insisted that he knows that Brown did nothing wrong and has expressed great faith in him for a long time. I know that the president will be taking this very hard and very personally if, in fact, it's as it looks.
Rita, let's talk about Ron Brown a little more for a second. He's 54. As you say, the president very close to him, appointed him Commerce Secretary. He was instrumental in the Democrats winning the last presidential election. He's very close to Senator Ted Kennedy and very close also to Jesse Jackson. He's a very important figure in bringing this party together. This is an election year, let's not forget. If the Commerce Secretary has been killed, how important a loss is that to the party?
Well, I think it's an important loss in a way spiritually. Ron Brown is just kind of the type of person that everyone really liked. He went with the president on his visit to Ireland, and I sat with him for about an hour just talking to him, and he has always had such enthusiasm for everything that the president does, and he has carried this out to the business world. And because he is an African American, he has been able both to involve the minority community and I think to bridge a lot of gaps between some more traditional, perhaps white-owned businesses and minorities, which is something that he always worked on doing very hard. So I think that he would put a big hole not just in the cabinet, but in the whole Democratic Party.
Rita, it may be David Martin talked about this a little before, and it may be a little premature as we really don't know what happened yet. But do you think this is likely in any way to change the president's policy towards the former Yugoslavia at this point?
Well, I think it all depends on whether there was any foul play involved. Right now, the White House is being very, very careful to say that they just don't have any details. They did not have any reports of foul play. They are certainly not ruling anything out. You know what a volatile part of the world that is. I would suspect that if they did discover foul play, then in fact there would be a reassessment. I also suspect, though, that if it's an Air Force plane that just went down, there will be a lot of toing and froing over there over how this could have happened. Because when you travel, and David has and I have traveled on American military planes, you always have this incredible feeling of invulnerability, even though you think that, you know, whenever you're on a flight and you're in bad weather, something could be a little shaky. There's that feeling that you always get that, well, you're safe because obviously you're on a U.S. military jet.
Rita Braver at the White House, thank you very much. We're trying to get more information, as we've mentioned over and over again this morning. The details are very sketchy at this point. As the White House put it, we simply just don't know what happened to the plane of Commerce Secretary Ron Brown that apparently has gone into the Adriatic Sea off the coast of Dubrovnik. We are trying to get, do we have Alan Pizzi right now? Gentlemen? Okay. Again, let's recap. We're trying to get more information from over there, but again, let's recap. If you have not heard, the plane of Commerce Secretary Ron Brown, who was on a trade mission with some 12 business executives from the United States, has apparently gone down off the coast of Dubrovnik in Croatia. There are virtually no details about how the plane went down. We are waiting for more. This is Anthony Mason with CBS News in New York. More details tonight on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. Good day.
Hillside over Croatia. 4 bodies have been found, but there is one survivor, reportedly a woman. There were 27 passengers and 6 crew members on the military plane. Amtrak and Baltimore City Police are stepping up patrols around Penn Station.